How are you guys? Welcome back to Wargaming China. And we are in the Xuzhou region of Jiangsu province at the Yuwang Mountain. And it's April 22nd, from April 22nd to May 19th. The Yuwang Mountain and the surrounding area, the Xuzhou area, will be defended by Liu Han's 60th Army against the Japanese 10th Division. But before I start explaining all of that, my last video I was talking about Long Yun, the King of Yunnan, and I left a few details out, and I'll put them in now because, you know, I should have finished the story, but I was running out of battery. An hour is long enough for any video to go. So Long Yun was deposed in 1945 by Liu Han. Now, why had this happened? Because as what I had told you, everything looked like he'd done everything right by Chiang. But Chiang was two or three things Chiang never forgave. Chiang never forgave anybody for looking better than him. Chiang never forgave anybody for any kind of perceived betrayal, especially with the communists. And Chiang was always somebody who would wait his time, bide his time, and strike when the time was hot. So things in Yunnan were going very well for Long Yun, King of Yunnan, until 34-35 and the Communist Long March. Now, however you dealt with the Communist Long March, Chiang was looking over your shoulder and judging you. We've already seen how Chai Jiteng, the governor of Guangdong, one of his first mistakes was, or one of his final mistakes, was not dealing with communists, was letting them bypass his positions. And again, we saw at Fujian, in Fujian province, with the Tang Ting Kai's forces, the former 19th Red Army, again, not attacking the communists. And of course, everything that Chiang didn't like, other than talking to the communists or making them look bad, was if you looked better than him. And Long Yun, certainly, with what he'd done to Yunnan and all of the progress that he'd made in Yunnan province, certainly had made Chiang look or think, perhaps people would be looking at him and thinking maybe he's better off to be in charge of China in my position. Anyway, when the communists did arrive in Yunnan, they themselves were apprehensive because they had arrived in Yunnan smack in the heart of Yi territory. Now, as I said, there are many minorities in Yunnan, ethnic minorities, but the Yi was considered the most warlike. I've also got to remind you that Yunnan province is very mountainous, jungly, fast rivers. It's a very hard province in which to project your force. So when the communists did arrive in the Yi territory in Yunnan, western Sichuan, they were very charming, and they convinced the Yi people that if they let the communists bypass, the Yi would be given independence. Well, Chiang would have expected Long Yun to move against the communists, but there were two or three reasons why he couldn't. One was the terrain. The terrain was appalling. This is why the communists chose the route they did. Appalling terrain to deter the pursuers. So even though where the communists marched through in Yunnan was Long Yun's territory and his concern, they may as well have been marching on the moon as far as the odds of getting an army there to challenge them were. But also, Long Yun was a Yi, and his people had made a deal with the communists, and he might have been governor of Yunnan, he might have been king of Yunnan, but he wasn't king of the Yi, and he would have found it hard to move against his own people. So Chang knew all of this, but only took their negatives into effect. That Long Yun, the king of Yunnan, had failed to attack the communists, and he never forgot it. Now, come 1942-43, the Americans are trying to raise money for China internally, so they have a bond drive. And basically the bond drive means that the Americans will make the bonds available to be bought with Chinese currency, and then at the end of the war, or at a certain time in the future, the bonds will be paid back in US dollars. Now, this was a great idea, but unfortunately, like a lot of great ideas from idealistic and altruistic people, crims, reprobates, and the corrupt could soon see a way to make money out of this, and a lot of money. So Long Yun in 1943 was caught red-handed fiddling this bond system, but again, it was in too good and powerful a position for Chiang to move against him. But that would change in August 1945 with the surrender of the Japanese in Vietnam. Now, this Japanese surrender would be taken by Yunnan's forces, and the only forces left in Yunnan that could go there were Long Yun's, the king of Yunnan's personal forces. So I sent them down south to take the Japanese surrender of Vietnam. And what happened in Vietnam was that, well, although the Chinese were not great friends of the Vietnamese communists or the Vietnamese independence movement, they were far greater not friends with the French. So many weapons and supplies fell into the Vietnamese hands. Many Japanese served with the Vietnamese, and Long Yun's and the Chinese forces occupying Vietnam turned a blind eye to it all. But in Yunnan itself, because Long Yun had sent his personal forces into Vietnam, he left the door wide open, and Chiang moved against him. Or rather, Lu Han moved against him and deposed him. There was a little bit of fighting in Kunming, but since the vast part of Long Yun's army was not there to support him, it was over within 3 or 4 days. And the fighting was more at points like radio stations, communications hub, train stations. It wasn't a broad front. I mean, he didn't have many forces in Kunming, but they were picked off one at a time over 3 or 4 days. Now, come the communists. Long Yun then worked under Chiang for about 2 or 3 years before he made his escape to Hong Kong and started a movement within the KMT to oust Chiang. Now, he would have stayed in Hong Kong. The communists took over China. His Lu Han, his cousin, nephew, was the chap who handed the province over to the communists. And Long Yun would return to China and be given administrative positions, high-level administrative positions, in the Chinese government's administration of Yunnan. On some of these administrative committees, he would sit side by side with Mao Zedong, and he would live until 1962 and be buried as a hero of China. So that takes us all the way back to this battle, Yuwang. So Yuwang is, how do I explain why this battle is? Well, Xuzhou is about to fall. It's April 22nd when this battle starts, and already Lai Zongren is evacuating his forces from the Japanese drive on Xuzhou. Now, these forces need to escape. And the re-equipped, reinvigorated and reinforced Japanese 10th Division is heading in a right hook around Taizhuang. They failed to take Taizhuang, but Taizhuang from this position is about 2 kilometers away, 3 kilometers away, and here should be the Grand Canal. The Japanese objective is to advance south, cross Yuwang Mountain, cross the bridges of the Grand Canal, and cut off the retreating forces of Lai Zongren. And those forces are needed for the forthcoming Battle of Wuhan. Now, the 60th Army's 183rd Division will hold Yuwang Mountain, and the 60th Army will fight here from the 22nd of April until the 15th of May, when it will be replaced by the 150th Xuzhou Division. Now, during this fighting, the roughly 36,000 men of the 60th Army will suffer almost 20,000 casualties. Nearly 15,000 of those casualties will be dead. So, of a 36,000 man army, after the battle, it will be down to 40% of its strength. But it will hold the Japs. And they have to hold Japs because the China needs Lai Zongren's troops to defend Wuhan. Now, in this battle, the Japanese first attacked on the Chinese left at Chewafang. Then they couldn't take that. Then they attacked Pizhu and couldn't take that. So the final attack was straight onto the mountain itself, because the mountain itself had dominated both battles and was able to lend support to both fights. So then the Japanese decided that the only way to crack this defensive line was to take Yuwang Mountain. And Yuwang Mountain was heavily defended, and the Chinese were in depth. Now, although the 60th Army was very well equipped and very well trained, we have to remember that this is their first contact with the Japanese. And although there's no doubt about how well equipped they are, dealing with the Japanese army and facing the Japanese army is a very daunting prospect, and there's better troops than these that have cracked when the Japanese army starts advancing. So what I'm going to do with this game is I'm going to allow for 4 possible routes of advance, and they'll be dictated by the dice. And then I will field a Japanese infantry regiment, 2 tank companies, an armoured car company, and plus artillery for the forces of the 10th Division, which, if you remember, it had to withdraw from Taizhuang and then had been forced to retreat northward by Tang and Bo's counteroffensive. But the 10th Division had soon re-equipped, resupplied, because the one thing about the Japanese army is they are never, ever, ever not coming forward. The Japanese army, we can say many negative things about the Japanese army, but the one thing we can never say is that they were not up for a fight. No matter what the odds, the Japanese army were always up to face the enemy. And very brave, tough soldiers the Japanese soldiers were. Now, also in this game, you'll see some pieces of equipment that you might think, well, what are they doing here? And I'll get to that, because as I said, the Yunnan Army is very well equipped, and although its battalions are not as large as Japanese battalions, their training and equipment should make up for that. Plus they're in prepared defensive positions. Schneider 75mm mountain guns, SMPs, and because the Chinese are in prepared positions, that should help them break the Japanese attack. Now, as you can see, at certain points in the battle, the mountain truly will affect certain points of battle. Has been fire range. To get this, to get the kind of effect that mountain had on the fighting with direct fire support on the war game table is pretty hard, because you've always got to compromise with space. But I think I've done a good job here today. And the plan is, if the Japanese come and attack Xuzhou, is that Chinese will fight as long as they can here before withdrawing. And if the Japanese attack the far flank, the Chinese left flank, hopefully these trucks will be able to embark their troops and start around the mountain to reinforce the other flank. That's the hope. The Chinese have a regiment to defend the entire area, and the Japanese have a regiment plus a lot of armor and support to attack in the place that the dice will dictate. Okay, I think that's everything you've learned about the battle. Jap 150mm guns, 75mm guns, Hargos. I think that's everything. Oh yes, the mountain itself is 126.1 meters high, but by the end of the fighting it will be 124.6 meters high. So that should tell you how much artillery and bombing the Japanese do of the mountain. Also, all the trees will be disappearing as the game goes on, because although the area was heavily forested and the hill heavily forested by the start of this battle, by the end of it there was only one tree left, and that tree is still standing today, and it's called the Xuzhou tree. If we look here, you will see that some of the elements of this game I'm really twisting the rapid fire rules for, especially when it comes to mortars firing in wooded areas and things like that. Again, more compromise and a little bit of more modification just for the playing of this game. Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you come back for the battle epilogue. And remember, guys, I never have a production schedule, so you can subscribe to, or you'll miss it. If you don't subscribe, you won't know when I'm going to put videos up, because I have no schedule. I have no I have no routine or schedule. I just make videos when I have the mojo. Okay, now that's Yuwang Mountain. Hope you enjoyed that. Hope you press like and subscribe. See ya.